Hey, let's try this again. Okay, so I think I'm live now. I don't know why the first live broadcast I did so well, and then I'm having so much trouble with this second live broadcast. Um, so I think I'm live. It would be really nice if somebody chimed off in the chat and let me know if I got everything set up right. Otherwise, I may actually just start drawing and not actually be broadcasting it. But anyway, I super apologize. This is actually my third attempt. Hopefully, this is working. I'm looking over at this other screen and it appears like it is, but I don't really know. Anyway, so again, for the third time, this is Jeremy, and we're doing a New Year's resolution where I try to improve my artistic skills by doing something creative. Um, I call it random acts of creativity. This one's particularly random because I wasn't actually intending to go live today. I just, kind of got some inspiration from my dog, who was looking super cute today. So I thought, hey, I'm going to draw my dog. And I'm like, well, I'll just go live and do it. I was actually intending to maybe go live tomorrow, not today. But I think I'm actually going to be busy tomorrow, so here I am. And I do plan to continue doing the Friday drawing sessions, but I think that I'll probably do a couple more throughout the week, just, you know, to really practice. I want to jump in and really practice a lot at first. So, this is actually my third time going through this, but what I plan on drawing today, might as well just jump into it, is my dog Guinness. So I've got this reference picture here. Super cute dog. Uh, I actually took this photo, I want to say a couple of years back. I posted it on Instagram, so yeah, at least a year ago. He hasn't changed very much, but I really like this picture. I like the way that light catches his face. I like that he's just looking off into whatever it is dogs look at. Maybe a squirrel, maybe something else. Um, but I really like this photo of him, so I think I'm just going to draw this photo. So I was getting into the drawing earlier before I realized I don't think I was actually broadcasting. So this is what I've got so far. So I've started sketching out the picture of Guinness here, and I guess I'm just going to continue with that. Hopefully, this is working, and hopefully there are people watching. If not, sorry, I don't. It is what it is. I'm not an expert at anything. Certainly not broadcasting on YouTube, and certainly not drawing, by the way. But this is a learning process. We'll see how it goes. So what I've done so far is I've drinking a lot of bourbon, and I've started sketching out my dog, kind of blocking off different features: his eyes, his nose, kind of like the mouth piece, a little bit of the ear. Um, I'm not super worried about the lines that I'm creating right now because they're probably going to change as I continue along and add more detail. So let me let me hit this one more time. I think I'll just practice with some live streams as well and get better at just doing that before I actually practice drawing. But anyway, so I'm just going to jump back right back in. I was talking about my dog earlier. I don't even know if that got broadcasted. Like maybe you guys are hearing all of this for the third time. I don't know, but I'm just kind of adding some features to a general shape of his face. This is my dog Guinness, by the way. I mentioned that before as well. He's named after my favorite beer. His mouth kind of drapes down over the bottom of his mouth. That's what I'm working on now. And as you can see, I've already got a bit of a nostril going here. He's got some features of his neck. I'll just kind of shape those in, even though that's really just kind of like the difference between the black of his coat and the white of his coat. They're not really features that would be lined out. They're just parts of just part of his coat. So I'm going to erase some of these lines because I have kind of tightened it up a little bit. Like his ear, I figured was longer, so I kind of made it longer. So let me clean that up. I think this is a good basic shape to kind of start coming in and adding some more detail. So I'm going to do that. So what I mentioned before is I've got all these pencils. Different pencils have like different darkness to them based on how soft they are. So obviously for the black parts of his coat, I'm going to use this like 9B. Most pencils that you just buy at the store for like, you know, I don't know, school or something like that, those are #2 pencils. So I think that's like an HB2 or something like that, which I have in here. But I'm going to want to go darker on his coat. So I'm going to be doing a lot with that. I don't really know the different, you know, darkness of these different pencils. So I'm going to start with the 3B and just see how dark that is, just to kind of come in here and add some more details. I'm going to start with the eyes because I think the eyes are the most prominent features dealing with portraits of any kind, whether it's human beings or whether it's dealing with dogs. It's what your eyes are drawn to is the first thing that you notice when you're looking at a portrait of someone, whether it's a dog or a human or whatever. So I really want to get the detail in that because if I get that right, then some of the other features I can kind of make mistakes on and it's not going to matter so much. So what I'm doing now, I mentioned before, like when I was doing my last broadcast, so like these lines don't really exist in nature. They're just shadows. And some of these shadows, so like you don't want to just draw an eyeball where you're just kind of like drawing it like a cartoon or a comic book. You're really just drawing shadows. So on his eye, he's got some shadow down here at the bottom of his eye, and he's got some shadow on the top of his eye. And even though I'm drawing lines, that's not really what it's all about. It's just drawing the shadows that I see in the reference photo. So he's got really thick shadow up here on the top of his eye. And you know, if anybody is watching this, just kind of like say something in the live chat just so that I know that I am actually streaming. It's fine if I'm not. I am recording this, so I'll post it later, but it would be nice to know if somebody out there is watching. Otherwise, you know, feel free to ignore me, but I just want to know if this is working. This is why you shouldn't drink bourbon and do a live stream. All right. So anyway, so he's got some shading to the top of his eye, and also some shading to the bottom. There's less shading on this side, so as you can see, I kept that kind of light. In fact, he's kind of got this white ring around his eye, so I'm gonna just kind of like add that a little bit, just so that I know that's there. And then it comes down into like some darker fur, which I'm not gonna bother with right now. But the actual pupil of his eye, so he does have a brown eye, and I've got like a lot of white space around here. So I initially drew the circle of his iris to not reach the bottom, but looking at the reference photo, it does actually go all the way to the bottom. So I'm just going to go back to my mechanical pencil and kind of fix that up. So it is a brown eye, so it's not going to be like strictly white. In fact, it kind of comes all the way over to the side. There's a little bit of white here on the left side. The rest of it fills up the entire oval. Oval? It's more like a football shape, really, of his eye. So there is some shading over here to the side. There's not a lot of white space in his eye. There's a little bit on the left. And then, of course, the actual iris is three-dimensional as well. So it's not just like a circle with some shade to it. There's actually some shadow because it kind of concaves inside the eye, inside the eyeball. So I kind of want to leave some white here. for the highlight that's on his eye. But then also the pupil. So you got three basic parts. You've got the outer lids of his eye. You've got some white space. You've got the iris, and then you've got the pupil. So the pupil is actually pretty big. I'm going to go ahead and shape it, but then I'm going to come back with a darker pencil and kind of fill that in because it is super dark. It comes more over than what I've drawn. And I'm going to add some more shading to that. Where's my 9 pencil? So because this is the pupil, I don't mind coming back with this darker color and or darker pencil, kind of filling that in. So as you can see, he's starting to get a bit of an eyeball going, which is good. And then I'm going to add some more definition to the top. Got kind of this curve over here, and then it comes down, not all the way around, just the shading on the side here. Alright, that's starting to look like him. Right, it's starting to look like his eye. So again, back to the iris itself. So the iris itself actually has some definition to it. This isn't going to translate to the screen very well, but there's kind of like some lines in that. I don't know what those parts are called. And then I'm going to bring the lid of his eye down a little bit more. All right, so it doesn't look like much. It does show up on camera, so that's good. I'm going to add some of his eyebrow now, just to kind of make his eyeball pop out, because right now it just kind of looks like this disembodied eyeball just hanging out there. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of add some of that fur. Again, it doesn't come all the way down to the eyeball itself. There's some white, well, not really white, but kind of like a gray eyelid. But he does have these very expressive eyes, which I'm just going to draw in with my darker, not super dark, it's just a 3B, but it is a darker pencil than the mechanical pencil that I was using just to kind of block out the shape. So this eyebrow feature is probably not really an eyebrow, it's more like an eyelid. It's not really like an eyelid, it's more like just a flap that comes down over the eyes. The actual eyelid is probably like not this entire feature. So that kind of curves around. And what's kind of cool is the basic shape of the sketch is going to change over time as you start adding these features that you see in the reference photo. Which is always kind of neat, because I like a lot of times I get a little nervous when my original blocked out sketch doesn't look exactly like I would imagine, but it's not really supposed to, because you're supposed to draw what you see, not what you know, right? So like I know that he has a head and he has ears and he has like a nose and stuff like that, but until I get in there and actually start drawing it, those features don't really come out. So who cares what the actual shape is, as long as I'm kind of like drawing in the space that I allotted for myself. So I'm going to come back and make this darker later, but I kind of want to just put some shading in to know that this is like the inside of his nostril. Not nostril, of his nose. Again, you shouldn't drink bourbon and draw on camera, but it is what it is. Alright, so he's also got a lot of black down under his eye. So I'm going to go ahead and start adding that shading in as well, just so that I know that it's there, and I'll come back and darken it up later. But it kind of like swoops across too. So I'm making just like swooping marks with the pencil, just to kind of fill that in. This does connect a little bit more here than what I initially drew. So I'm going to add that. And he's kind of got like a little dark splotch here, which I'm going to add just so that I know it's there. And I can come back and deal with it later. This bit comes down, and then he's kind of got this dark bit there. And then it's just more, you know, kind of like spiraling out from the base of his eyeball. Let's see, how's that looking? Okay, it's going to look weird because I haven't added the rest of the shading to the head, but that will come later, and it'll look better as we go along. Right now, it kind of looks a little weird, but that's okay. So I'm going to go ahead and start moving towards this other eyeball. This is all gray, so I'm just going to kind of shade that in just so that I know that that is not white. This part, his mouth is very white. Let me go back to the reference photo real quick. So as you can see in the reference photo, his mouth area is very white. Like, it wasn't when we first got him, it just kind of grew in that way. He's got white in his eyebrows. The rest of his face is just light on black. So he's a black dog, but that's going to come off a little bit more gray because the white is reflecting off of it, and so on. So I've got to work all that in somehow. But right now, I'm just going to kind of shade it in so that I know that that is not white. And then I know that this is going to be darker, so I'll kind of shade that a little bit darker. I know that this is going to be kind of white because he's got those white eyebrows. I know that he's got a white eyebrow here, so I'm going to kind of shape that in. And then I'm going to kind of just gently shade, like, not gently, just roughly shade in all of this area just so that I know that that's not white. There's no definition to it. It doesn't look great, but that's okay. All right, so now I feel comfortable moving on to his other eyeball. And again, they're not real lines here. They're just shadows. So he's got a lot of shadow on this eye because it's further away from the light. It's kind of partially obscured by other features of his face. So I can actually move in, like I feel comfortable moving into like the darker pencil and just kind of add some of that shadow in there. Now his entire eyeball isn't like in shadow because there is some highlights on it. Let's see. But there is a lot of darkness in this eyeball. So I feel comfortable just adding a lot of darkness to it, and then we can kind of go from there. And then there's some shadow above the eyeball. Let me round that off a little bit. Because his eyeball is round, you know, like, so I can cheat a little bit. And then there's not as much shadow at the base of the eyeball, or like it's at least a thinner line. And then the highlight is actually more on the left side than on the right side, so I'm just going to do that. And then I don't want it to be too dark, but I'm going to fill in some of that highlight shadow, some of that highlight with shadow, because it's not pure white. Yeah, I'm kind of okay with that. So where I had just kind of like put in some rough sketching here earlier, I'm going to kind of soften that up a bit and give his nose a little bit, his nose, snout, there we go, a little bit more definition. So I'm thinking I actually drew too long of a nose, so I'm going to try to fix that. Because like when I'm looking at the reference photo, the space between his eyeball and the actual nose itself is not as long as what I had put in here. So I'm going to fix that up if I can. So I'm just going to kind of redraw. His nose is actually bigger than I had initially drew as well. So that's where the eraser's fine. I mean, it's not terrible. It's kind of looking like A little bit like Guinness. I love Guinness. Guinness is a fun dog. He is he keeps popping up every time I mention his name. He's a fun dog. I think I think he's actually a little autistic because like he's border collie mix with some other stuff in it. He came from like a puppy mill, um, so I was always kind of concerned. He actually has I've never had a dog that had this problem before, but he actually has epileptic seizures. So there's something weird going on in his brain. But he's super smart. He can open doors by himself. He knows like where all the treats are. If we shouldn't have said treats. He knows where we hide the food. He's like super smart, but then also he's really dumb sometimes. So he's got a bit of a mix there. He's a great dog. When we first got him, he was a little weird. He didn't want to go anywhere. He still doesn't like doing car rides. He doesn't like doing all the normal things that dogs are known for. But he's kind of grown on me over time. Like he was really high maintenance at first, but now I'm like he's like a little buddy. He sits on my lap while I watch TV, things like that. So okay, I'm going to kind of shade in this nose a little bit and fix some of my mistakes from earlier when I was just sketching it out. Draw what you see, not what you know. What you know. Earlier when I drew his nose, I was like, oh, okay, I think that it would be like this. But now that I'm actually looking at it closely, and that's what, in my opinion, again, I'm not a professional artist. I didn't go to school for this, um, but I have drawn a few pictures over the years, and I feel like I know enough to form an opinion on it. In my opinion, art is just looking at something passionately and paying attention to the details. So it's just appreciation of what you see. So I am appreciating his nose right now. Yeah. All right. So he's got kind of like this curve coming around on his nostril that kind of comes down to. Again, you can't really draw what you know anyway because I've never really looked at a dog's nose to know that this is what they actually the shape of them is because like this is not like a human nose. A human nose do not look like this, and I don't spend a lot of time staring at his nose, so it's kind of like a little bit of an education for me on the actual shapes of a dog's nose. I don't draw a lot of dog pictures. Every now and then somebody might want me to draw their pet or something like that, and I do that sometimes, but I don't spend a lot of time drawing dogs. But in my opinion, even as amateur as I am, if you're just drawing shapes, you can draw whatever. Like I drew a horse. I don't know much about horse anatomy, but I drew a horse just because I'm drawing the shapes that I see. And then when you're done, it just ends up looking like a horse because you drew all those shapes. Okay, so I'm happier with that nose a little bit. I think it's looking more like the reference photo, but there's definitely some really dark areas here. So this is where I switched to the softer pencil because I don't have to put as much pressure to get that graphite out of it. I can just kind of softly come in here and add some of that. I want to say lead, but it's not lead. I don't think it's lead. It's graphite. Maybe it's the same thing. I don't know. You can clearly see that I didn't go to school for this because I feel like if somebody went to school for this stuff, they would probably have like a class or two about what's in these tools that you're using. Instead, I just pick up the tools like a caveman, and I come in and I'm like, oh, I can make this picture, no problem. So according to YouTube, people are watching it. Nobody's commented in the chat yet, so I assume you guys are just watching it while you're watching TV and stuff like that. I assume that it's actually broadcasting now, which makes me feel more comfortable than when I started. Again, sorry about the technical issues. They weren't intended. Nobody intends technical issues. Alright, so anyway, I think his nose came off a little bit too dark, so I'm going to kind of erase some of this so that I can put some of that highlight back in there. Get this eraser real clear off. The problem is, it's not going to erase it as much as it needs to be erased, but... Alright, so underneath his nostril, there's actually like a little bit of white, so that's why I did that eraser bit, because I kind of want to put that back in there. And if I was better at what I was doing, I would have left some white in there so I didn't have to do that. Anyway, I think that's good enough for the nose to move on to a different section just so that I can, you know, make some progress on this. I might come back and add some more detail on it, but to me it's kind of looking like a dog nose, which is good. It may not be perfectly like Guinness's nose, but I feel like I can add more details later and kind of clean that up. All right, so on his mouth, he's got, I don't know what this region of his mouth is called, but whatever that is, it kind of split right below his nose. And by split, I just mean that there's like some shading there. And then this part is actually kind of dark on his nose. On his mouth. I'm going to call this part his nose, and I'm going to call the rest of his mouth. So this part is actually dark on his mouth, so I'm going to kind of shade that in a little bit. And then again on this side, I'm going to switch to my mechanical pencils just so that I can get some more precision to this, but it kind of comes out from that center piece. That center piece is quite dark. It kind of goes right into the nostril itself. The mechanical pencil is actually really good for doing detail because even though you have to bear down more to get darkness out of it, it's not as easy as like the softer pencil. You really have a lot more precision. So I like using mechanical pencils, but you're not going to get all of that darkness out of it that you kind of need for like other parts of his coat, especially the ones that are like really black. So this part is all white, but there is some definition to it, so I'm gonna kind of fluff up his fur here and bring that out. And then this comes down a little bit more. Okay, so moving into the rest of his mouth, it kind of comes down a little bit below this part. I think my initial lines are pretty good for that. So I'm going to kind of darken that up. Through here, it's super dark. I don't know. I'm looking at the screen. It kind of looks like a dog to me. That's my standard. It looks like a dog. It's like it doesn't matter if it looks like my dog. It just looks like a dog. That's why I rarely ever show the reference photo. I'm showing you guys because again, this is a learning process for me. So I want you guys to know how bad I screw up because I don't want to kind of like what's the term, file drawer my mistakes. I want you guys to see my mistakes so that you guys can judge me harshly. But if I was doing this for, you know, just to draw a dog, I probably wouldn't show the reference photo because it's not really relevant. It's like, does it look like a dog? If it looks like a dog, you did a good job. Let's see. Okay, so continuing along with his mouth. Now, this part comes down and it's super dark through here, so I'm going to go ahead and switch back to my darker pencil, super dark pencil. That is super dark. Let me go ahead and put that shadow in just to give that mouth some real definition. And then I'll come back and add some detail to it. I'm kind of glad that I went ahead and did this, even though I had those technical issues earlier. I'm glad I did this tonight because I had so much fun on Friday doing my first live stream that I didn't really want to wait a week. And once you do one, you just kind of want to do more. So I figure, why not? See, kind of shade this in a little bit. Now, what's cool about doing dogs is a lot of it's fur. So, like, you throw in these lines, and they don't have to be perfect because, like, fur isn't. You know, it's not like Guinness wakes up every morning and combs his hair. It just kind of goes all over the place. Okay, so then this part, I'm going to erase this because that line actually isn't there in reality. All right. I also have this blending stump. Usually I just wad up paper and use that, but I am going to blend some of this nose here just because it looks too sketchy. I want it to kind of be a little bit darker. This is where you come back and kind of make adjustments. You know, whether you're doing a painting or you're doing a sketch, it really is layers upon layers. So I'm adding additional layers here of graphite, and I'm blending the lower layers. Adding some darker detail in here because he does have like these kind of darker splotches above his eye. And then this part up here is super dark, so I feel like I can add that in as a definition. Also, I should mention this paper I'm using does have a little bit of texture to it, so whenever I just kind of do quick lines across it, it's going to have a little bit of texture to it anyway, which I think works well for this. Like, it's not super smooth paper, but that texture that comes out actually adds to it, I think, because, I don't know, it more closely resembles fur. All right, so coming off of his nose, he's got some dark splotches, but they're kind of like almost like little spots and stuff, like freckles. Yeah, he's got freckles. He's got little black freckles on his nose. So I just kind of want to put those in as like almost like little tiny little spots. So there's a little bit of dark fur coming off of here. So I'll just kind of put that in. All right. So I feel pretty good about that so far. I'm going to switch to this like lighter pencil. And again, he is a black dog, so this area here is technically black. However, it's catching because he's got kind of like this silky fur. It's actually catching some of the light, so it comes off as gray, which I'm just going to kind of shade in. But there is also this little bit of definition here, so that's going to be a darker shape. I feel like this is a good candidate to blend. I don't like to overblend my pictures. I feel like that's a mistake. People who work with pencils do. Like they'll end up overblending it, and it'll just look too smooth. So I still want some of that sketch texture, especially when dealing with the dog that has fur. You want to kind of leave some of that texture there. But for this part, it is kind of actually smooth in the photo. It is kind of like blurred out. So I'm comfortable doing that for that bit. But then I'm going to come back, and again, layer upon layer, I'm going to add some of that detail back in. Especially where I see it in the original photo. he does have these like kind of white eyebrows, so like I want to make sure that this part stays light, even though I can kind of add some fur there. This part does kind of come down there. This part does come. All right. So this part is actually kind of dark through here, so I'll kind of darken that in. Alright, so I feel comfortable enough with that to kind of start moving on to some other areas. So this part is black, or it's black fading into like the white of his mouth. So I'm going to add some definition to that. He does have this dark area under his eye. I don't know. Maybe I'm biased, but it kind of looks a little bit like Guinness. I love my dog. My dog is so cute. And this picture is starting to look cute. In my opinion. I don't know. Like, you guys can tell me in the comments or in the chat whether or not you feel the same way. But in my mind, I'm never going to be a good artist if I'm like constantly liking my own work, right? Like you're supposed to hate your work, which I do. I do actually hate my work, but while I'm drawing it, I'm really into it. Like that's that passionate attention I was talking about. When you have passionate attention towards the subject matter, like this photo, you know, people can look at a photo and just be like, oh, well, that's a nice photo and stuff. But when you're drawing from the photo, you have passionate attention for it. And that passionate attention for it translates into your artwork where you're like, man, this is awesome. I like this. I like how this is turning out. And then you go back and look at it later and you're like, oh, I don't know. Maybe it doesn't look exactly the way I had in mind while I was drawing it, but yeah, kind of messed that up a little bit. So let me blend that in a little bit. Kind of soften that up. All right. But anyway, I'm liking how it's turning out. I don't hate it. But if you're not paying attention, I don't think I'm the best judge of the art while it's happening. That's what you guys, the viewers, are. You're the judge. Alright. So this looks like just kind of like this ugly smudge, but it's going to start coming together, I think, as I bring it up into the top of his eye, which is partly this kind of like white eyebrow, and then also partly straight up black fur. So even though I'm not showing it, later when you're watching this, you can kind of skip back to the reference artwork and kind of judge me by skipping back to that and then coming back to this part and seeing, well, is it starting to look like it or not? Yeah, I don't know. I think it looks enough like it. So this part kind of comes in, but it's not perfectly, it's not like one line straight across. There's actually some definition here where this comes in and then this part kind of jets up a little bit. So I'm going to kind of draw that. And then it comes down and then the ear starts here. I'm going to go ahead and smooth this part in and then kind of add some definition to it. Because it is really smooth through here. And the problem is I'm right-handed, so I'm used to drawing cross-hatching like this, or just like shading in general, when the actual fur on his head is kind of coming down. So I need to kind of fix that with some detail here as well. And as you can see with my blending stump, I'm coming back and I'm forcing myself to go in this opposite direction. Even though I sketched it like this, I'm coming back and fixing it like this because that's really what it looks like. It doesn't look like how I actually sketched it. Alright. Yeah, it's looking like a dog to me. So he's got this part here is actually all the way up to his eyeball. So let me blend all that in. This part here isn't going to be white. I'm going to have to fix that. This part here is actually white, so I'll leave that white. Alright, let me... This is super dark in the reference photo, so I'm going to go and put that in. And then it kind of comes down a little bit. And there's a lot of fur down here coming into the top of his eye. Of course, the top of his eye isn't actually white, it's more gray, so I'm going to kind of gray that in a little bit. And same over here. There. Up here, it's got a little bit of darkness to it, so I'm going to add that. That kind of comes down. Alright, this is the tough part because I'm just going to draw the shadows that I see. Like, it's against my intuition because I feel like the ear has a clearly defined shape and stuff, but that's not what you actually see in the reference photo. All you see is shadow of fur. So I'm just going to add the shadow that I see and hope for the best. So as you can see, I'm not drawing a line here. I'm just doing really dark shading. And I'm hoping that's going to turn out right. It kind of is framing his face, which is what I'm going for. You do this with humans as well when you're drawing humans, or at least I do, is you kind of draw the I always start with the eyes because the eyes are really like if you capture the attention with the eyes, some of the other details don't matter so much. But once you have the eyes, you start framing in the face. In the dog's case, it's with the ear, but in a human's case, it's often with the hair. So you start framing in the face with the hair. I don't know about my proportions here. I think they're fine. They're good enough. I think this ear actually comes in a little bit more here, and then maybe up a little bit. So I'm just drawing shadow, really. But then I kind of have to tie that into the rest of the thing. So right now, this part is way too light for this part. So let me bring in this pencil and kind of like make that less abrupt. They call that blending. Blending that shadow into the rest of his forehead. Yeah. So another thing I'd like to do as an artist, so like you often see people drawing like this, right? So I've never gotten into that habit. I always draw, like I'm holding a pencil, like I'm writing a letter or something like that, and it works for me. But I wanna get in the habit, so I'm just gonna practice with that actually, because that's what this is all about. It's about habit building. I wanna draw like a proper artist. And like Leonardo da Vinci and everything, I'm sure he drew like this, or even Leonardo DiCaprio in Titanic. I mean, you saw that scene where he's drawing Kate Winslet. He's drawing like this. So in order to be a proper artist, you have to pick up artistic habits. Now, I'm sure that again, I didn't go to school for this. Maybe there's a reason they draw like that. I would imagine if this was on an easel, it would definitely help with that. You wouldn't have this kind of top-down thing that I've got going on. Yeah, so that's kind of cool. So I'm not worried about the rest of his mouth right now. I just really want to like get this ear kind of squared away. So there is a highlight that comes down his ear. I'm gonna gray that in, even though it's not gonna stay very long. It comes down his ear. It kind of gives a bit of a definition to his ear. I think this is lined up right. Yeah, I'm gonna go with that. This is 9B? Yeah, this is a super dark one. Forgive me if I mumble to myself. I'm not used to explaining what I'm doing. Okay, so again, there's a little bit of highlight that kind of separates his ear from the rest of his head. So I got that in, and then the rest of it's super dark, actually, except for the highlight down here at the base of his thing. But up here, it gets super dark. So I'm just gonna make that super dark. There is this bit here that kind of represents some sort of fluff. So I'm going to make that super dark. Oh, let me go back to practicing the proper pencil holding method. So it is kind of nice to hold the pencil like this. I feel like I'm a kid scribbling with crayon or something. I can see why people do this. So again, this is all super dark up through here. It gets less dark as it goes down. This isn't perfectly across. It's more like, you know, kind of folded. He's got these cute ears, really. I really love his ears. So this actually comes up. There's some tufts sticking out, so I'm just going to add those just because I believe they really belong there. But otherwise, it's just a floppy ear that comes down. It doesn't really require a lot of detail because there's not a lot of detail in it. Now, as it gets down here, there's actually the shadow that comes across. Oh, I'm gonna go back to drawing the way I'm used to. There's a shadow that comes across the bottom of it like this, and then that comes up. Yeah, I messed that up. That's not the right circle there. Not circle, curve. It's not the right curve. It curves inward, and then it comes back around. Yeah, this paper's got a lot of texture to it. So you really have to kind of fill in some of these gaps here. Or you can use the blending tool, but I'm not gonna. Alright. Now, all the lines don't connect, and the reason why is because there's some highlights here that I kind of want to put in with a lighter color. Or a lighter value, I guess. These aren't colors. It's black. It's the absence of color. Or the absence of light, at least. Which I guess would translate to the absence of color. Okay, so I don't have to get too dark here because his neck is actually going to be super dark. And then this is more round, so I'm going to round that off a little bit. And then it kind of comes up. This part here, more curved, not straight down. Alright, so I'm going to go back to my colored pencil, not colored pencil, my mechanical pencil to kind of add. It's not going to show up on camera all that well, but I'm going to add some fur detail. I like doing this. Like, it really is hard to notice in this like dark area, but I like that kind of detail because that's the kind of stuff that really captures your attention when you're looking at a piece of art. I get fascinated by like individual lines. Like if I'm looking at a painting in a museum or something and I see this brush stroke there, I imagine when that brush stroke was actually put down, like especially like a 500-year-old painting or something like that. I imagine what it must have been like for the artist to have put that down 500 years ago, and that kind of stuff will capture my attention to no end for like a long time. Like people might spend time at a museum actually appreciating the art and trying to figure out what the art's about and stuff. I'm just looking at these like lines that somebody painted, and I'm like, man, that's kind of cool. That was put there 500 years ago. Anywho, so this highlight isn't as thick as I put in originally, and then this part is super dark and has more curve to it, so I'm gonna kind of put that in a little bit more. And then this is super dark. It comes down like so. So I'm just darkening some of this stuff up. Because that's what I see. This is all super dark in here. Again, on camera, it's probably catching the lamp above it and reflecting too much light because graphite is reflective. But to me, I'm seeing a super dark ear. Looking kind of good. Good enough. I'm never going to become a better artist if I'm all constantly going, good enough. Alright, so his mouth comes down through here. I mean, so I'm drawing this line down, but it's not really a line down. It's more like it's coming out to the side. But it's fine because this is all going to be covered up. And then you've got kind of like this dark area through here. And I might have put that too far over. Yeah, I'm comfortable with that. And then that comes back up into the other side of the ear. And then, even though there's some white in here, it's like kind of medium. And then up here, it goes back to this kind of same value that's up here. So I'm going to kind of pencil that in. Again, he's a black dog, you know. If he was a brown dog, probably a lot more changes in value. Alright, and then through here, I'm going to kind of do this sideways if I can, because that's the way the lines are going in his face. Gonna kind of follow the contours of the fur. I think that's enough just to give it some definition, and then I'll come back and add some more details later. So there's kind of like this bit here, and then this kind of comes down. It's got kind of like this, I don't know what you would call that. I mean, they're jowls, but I don't know if that part is actually that. So I'm gonna actually sharpen this pencil because I'm laying it on pretty thick. So it's getting down to a bit of a nub. Right. Again, if anybody has any questions or anything as I'm going along, I'm happy to talk with you. This is a live chat, or that's what I had in mind. I mean, I could record these things and post them, but I thought they'd be fun and interactive. I know that this one's kind of like out of left field. It wasn't really scheduled. I didn't really invite anyone. But if you do want to chat, I don't mind taking breaks every now and then just to answer questions or just, talk about the weather or whatever. That's fun for me. The weather has been strangely warm, by the way. We had this weird cold spell right before Christmas where everything like froze. It was a negative several tens of degrees, which is unusual for this area, central Kentucky. And since then, it's practically been spring. There's been some rain lately, but for the most part, it's been nice out. So he's got this transition to some dark fur here. One of the reasons why I like doing pets is they do have like some variation on their fur. So he's got like this little dark area here. Same with like doing hair and like the highlights of hair. He's got this dark area here, but then it goes right into some white. And then the white itself is kind of layered with some dark areas, which really creates this kind of cool like these cool little things that you can look at, like visual features, I guess. And you kind of have to pencil them in these short strokes just because that's how they look, you know. And then this stuff, I'll come back and do this with like mechanical pencil here to give it more detail, but I'm just kind of blocking it out. And then all of this kind of flows into this, again, dark area through here, which kind of comes off of this and then goes into the rest of his neck, which goes beyond the tip of his ear. Now I don't want to do too much here because I am right-handed and I have to come back over and do the other side, so I don't really want to put a lot of like graphite down yet because I don't want to smudge. That's also one of the reasons why artists probably draw like this, and then some artists, you know, put stuff on their hands so that they don't smear things. I'm not as concerned about that kind of stuff, but it's something I want to be conscious of, or else I'll just get all this smudge all over the place. So coming over to this side, this comes down through here. Just drawing in dark fur. This bit is not how I drew it in my baselines, so this is wrong. That initial sketch is just kind of give you an idea of proportions. As you can see, I'm basically freehanding this from scratch. But as I get into the actual details, I start noticing that, oh, I did that wrong, and I have to actually fix that line, because this comes down more like that instead. Now, it looks weird right now, but once we start adding, yeah, I got my 9B, this is all straight up black. So I'm just gonna add a lot of black through here because that's what it is. Then we'll give it some more definition later. But this is super dark, and that's what's nice about these softer pencils, is you can add all of that fairly quickly. Like if you were trying to do this with, in fact, let me show you. So if you were doing this with the mechanical pencil, it really doesn't show up on camera, I'm sure, but that's lighter, and it takes longer, and it's just not good. All right, and then this kind of comes down a bit like this, and again, this is all black as well. Now this is a little bit lighter, so let me kind of get my pencil the other way. I'm not really even using these pencils, so throw them to the side. You know, all of those pencils in the box, and I end up using the same ones. I am going to have to sharpen this. So there's like a little bit lighter through here, but the rest of it's just like super dark. Now this part starts coming back in, and I'll add some definition up here in a moment, but this comes back in, and I kind of want to be careful about how my lines curve, because that actually is the curvature of the fur. time. How long has this been on? Time for some more bourbon. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and just shade all of that in because that's all it is. So it's kind of arbitrary where you end the sketch. I'm just going to kind of end it down here. I'm going to sharpen this again. This bit through here is lighter. I'll add some detail to that. And then it comes down into some lighter fur, so I don't just want to kind of like scribble. I want to give that some definition. Alright, so I feel like this blank space here, I really need to like actually start adding some detail, or else it doesn't matter that it looks weird as I'm going along because, you know, it's not done. But to me, I think it's time to add some definition to this because otherwise it does look weird. Alright, so that fur comes swooping across here. So regarding the technical issues earlier, I do think that I need to do a practice run at first, just so that I can make sure that everything's streaming right and that it's not going to overload my laptop. Again, my laptop's a little bit old. It's a 2015 Mac, so it's not super new. Probably needs more memory, things like that. But I'm pretty slow to replace things. I'm a starving artist. I'm on a budget. If it ain't broke, I ain't replacing it. I like doing art and you know, feeling like an artist. Uh, just coming in here and creating things makes me feel like I'm you know, being an artist. That's kind of what this whole project is all about. Over the course of the year, I kind of want to transition from some guy who does doodles every now and then into like an actual like artist who spends time um, enough to where they know what they're doing and they have the experience to where they encounter something like, I don't know, black fur, and they kind of know how to approach it. Which I don't think I've ever drawn Guinness before, so, or any black dog. So this is kind of new to me. I'm switching to mechanical pencil because like I want to actually add some detail that is a little bit sharper. Because these things matter. You can do like a simple sketch or whatever, but these little tiny details and stuff are really what makes the picture more believable and more realistic. You're never really going for like a photo, but you do want it to kind of like look realistic. And that comes from this kind of detail. I think my dog's actually going to bark here in a minute. I heard some noises in other parts of the house, but we'll see. Let's see. Add a bit of mustache to the guy. He is an older dog. He's grown a mustache. Just some simple fur through here, or the suggestion of fur. I like that. Let's call that the suggestion of fur. Let's take a moment and look at it. So I've got this zoom view. Let's see. And it's not, doesn't really zoom it in that much. But it's actually starting to look like a dog. Let me go to the reference real quick. I think I think it's looking pretty similar to me. I don't know. Of course, there's this like big gap on the side, but we're going to fill that in a little bit. Let's see how long this has been going. I really don't know how long this is going to take, so I apologize if you guys have other things to do. Feel free to drop out and come back some other time. Um, it's not just a live stream. I'm going to make it video on demand as well. And for those people who don't have the patience to sit through a 2-hour broadcast watching somebody draw a picture of his dog, I got the idea to start making shorter videos as well. YouTube has this feature called Shorts, and I'm like, hey, you know what? I'll do that. I've got the skill set for that. So I did that with my earlier broadcast, and I think it went pretty well. People seem to appreciate it, so I'm going to do that for this as well. So it's going to be like sped up so that you can just kind of like watch it magically appear on the page. Instead of you guys who are watching this now, who are like seeing how the sausage is made. I enjoy watching other people's videos as well, where it's kind of sped up and you kind of just see things come together. I mean, I keep saying it, but I'll come back to it because like that's kind of the theme of this show, random acts of creativity. It is really cool to see things created from nothing. Like we started with a blank page here, and now there's a dog peeking out through it, or the basics of a dog. And I think that's cool. I'm sure you do as well, or else you wouldn't be watching. Maybe you watch because you're interested in art. Maybe you just appreciate art, or maybe you're an artist yourself and you like watching other people work. I do. I'm both appreciative of art in general, and then I also like watching other people work. Like honestly, this is like hypnotizing to me to watch people draw, and then you just have something that just came out of nothing. I imagine I keep going back to like how the cavemen felt, painting on a cave wall. It's a basic instinct of human beings to just create things that weren't there before, and that's what I'm doing. So now I'm just kind of like adding just roughly the other side of his neck. And as you can see, I'm kind of working down. So like I said, I always start with the eyes, and I want to make sure that all the other features are there. I can come back and add detail to them later, but I kind of want to work away. And that's just because I haven't mastered the floating pencil. I'm always conscious of where my hand is, and so on. I mean, not like super conscious. I'm not that worried about it. All right, so I'm going to leave that for a mechanical pencil so that I can add some really super fine detail in here, because that's all you really got. You've got fur, but it's super fine fur through here. Got some eraser on it. Kind of like I'll add more shading up there later. But right now, I kind of wanted this. He's got he's got like a bit of like. I mean, I've got that too. The older I get, you get kind of jowls. He's got that here. It's cute. It waddles, and I don't know if waddle's the right word. I don't care. So I'm just adding, some detailed lines. All right, so this part all through here is again super dark. He's got some white in his chest, So I am going to leave that, just kind of hint at it. The further you get away from the details, so like I'll come back in, add some more detail to his eye. But the further you get away from like the main focus or the detail, it can get a little more abstract, I think. That's my understanding. So I don't mind just scribbling down here. Is this the 9B? No, that's the 3B. I want the super dark. The softer it is, it's easier to just kind of lay it on thick. Stop for the bourbon tasting. Oh, this is that 1776. I didn't know exactly what bourbon I grabbed the last time, but that's what I grabbed this time. I thought maybe somebody might quiz me on that, so I wanted to be sure. 1776 from the James E. Pepper Distillery in Lexington. No, this isn't a plug. I'm just mentioning what I'm drinking. They don't even know I exist, much less pay me for promoting their bourbon. Alright, so that's kind of cool. Let me check my reference photo real quick. I think this actually comes up a little bit more over here. Now I brought this down this far, so I don't have to, but I kind of want to be consistent on the other side. And again, the more you get away from the details of the face, you can be kind of abstract, and you can just kind of scribble a little bit. But also, he's kind of got some white fur here that blends into the black, so I'm going to kind of hint at that a little bit. His fur does kind of come down like that. Let me get rid of this pencil. I'm not even using it. Basically, you can get away with just a really dark pencil and also your mechanical pencil for details. Right. So I think that this is actually a little bit more out. Now that I look at it. Again, I'm just freehanding. I could have like started with the tracing, or I could have started with like measuring with rulers and junk like that. But again, I don't think it looks too bad just eyeballing it. Let's see. Instead of, I'm kind of leaning over to the side because I kind of have my laptop covering up part of his reference photo. So at this point, I'm kind of like taking some of my stuff and making it work well with each other here. Or blending it in, I guess is what they would call it, but it's not really blend as in like softening it. It's just taking the features and kind of like making them not so out there on their own. This line here is really super dark, so I'm going to bring that down. I think this is less dark. I'm trying to pick some of that graphite up, but yeah. This part here is kind of light. So at this point, what I'm doing is kind of like really adding some definition to parts that were kind of washed out a little bit. darker through here. Right. So I don't know. I haven't been paying attention. So Vertigo popped in and was like asking if this is where they're auctioning off the gold nuggets. Um, for those of you who have no idea who Forrest Fenn is, he hit a treasure, and they just recently auctioned off his treasure. So um, we actually crashed the auction house's live stream, and we're like asking a bunch of questions about Forrest Fenn. So I think that's what he's getting at there. He's joking. He's making a joke. Vertigo's a nice guy. Let's see. It's kind of looking like a dog to me. I could probably add some more detail. I think there are some pieces that I missed here. Like this kind of comes around with a little bit of shade here. So this is actually part of the bottom of his mouth, and then this is part of the top of his mouth. So I missed that separation. No Vertigo, there are no gold nuggets here to be auctioned off. I wish there were. And then this bit here. So it's looking like a dog to me. I know that my camera's not all that great. It is probably looking a little blurry. But if you look at the reference photo, you look at what I've kind of pieced together, in my opinion, it's not that bad. I'm kind of happy with it. So I'm trying to think. So each time I do these things, because I am trying to improve, I'm trying to think what I could have done differently, what I could have improved upon. I really think that not freehanding it, like actually measuring things out, there are tricks to that, right? So like, especially if you're working. Oh, thanks, Vertigo. I appreciate that. If you are working with a reference photo, there's like tricks to, getting all the proportions right. Like literally, you can print out the photo and then trace it, and then apply that line to your paper or whatever, and then you're like spot on. Or like if you're a professional artist, you can like they always do like, I don't know, like this kind of that makes me look like a loser, but you can kind of like measure the reference work and apply it to the page. I don't do any of that. I mean, this is all freehand, and I think it turned out fine. But really, if like if this was a commission work or something like that, like if somebody actually wanted me to draw their pet, I probably would spend a little more time getting everything right, because it matters to them. Because like maybe it's their pet that passed away, or maybe it's just their best friend or something like that. Then it matters. I don't think it matters. Like Guinness isn't gonna be mad at me that I didn't draw him perfectly. I think he'll be happy that I give him a bacon bit later for being such a good dog, a good boy, in posing for my picture. Trying to think what else can I do here. Yeah, at this point, I'm just adding extra detail that really doesn't matter. I think this looks enough like him. I'm going to peel this off so that I can maybe try to get it up to the camera so that you guys can see and judge for yourselves. Like with the other one, I'll take a picture of it with better detail so that you can judge it. Kind of hold it up to the camera. Yeah, so like now that it's out of the lamp, you can kind of see there's some definition to his neck. You got some definition in his mouth. Got the highlight of his eyes. Yeah, looks like a dog to me. It's a good boy. All right, so I think I am going to kind of call this done. Let's see, this has been going for about an hour and 20 minutes, which surprises me. I thought it was going to take longer. But this is a good stopping point. I feel good that now I can add in some background or whatever. But I like how he just kind of pops out of the page. In fact, let me erase this little smudge here. Actually, that just made it more smudgy. I like that he just kind of pops out of the page. Maybe I might care more about that kind of stuff if I was creating a full drawing or something like that. For the problem is you can't stop. At some point you have to call it done. And the more you look at the reference work, you realize, well, there's more I can add to this. But I think it looks enough like Guinness where I'm happy to call it done enough. So I'm going to sign this. I'm going to give it a year. It's going to go in the book. All right. So, wrong screen. Again, just trying to improve upon my artwork. I appreciate you guys hanging out with me. This is Guinness, my dog. Hope if you enjoyed what you watched, be sure to like and subscribe so that you can watch more in the future. I'm going to try to do at least. See, I kind of want to go back in here and add some more. But I hope to create like this kind of stuff at least once or twice a week. So, but until then, catch you later.